Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Wednesday. It's July 13th. This will be our chart lesson for the day, and another crazy day in the markets. Um, I mean, we'll talk about the day overall shortly here, but you can see the daily. This is the daily chart, and you can see the large. We did close down from yesterday, but you can see we were traded way down and we traded way up at one time. So a lot of mixed trading today. We had actually traded up, and then there was some CPI news that came out this morning um, related to all of the inflation that we're having, and obviously the market didn't see it as very good, and this thing tanked in just a few minutes. The market was down significantly. So inflation continues to be a real problem for the market. So anyway, it looks like we could be in a range here. We'll go ahead and just mark it, but it's sure looking that way. We're not really going lower, but we can't go much higher either. So in the big picture, we're still in this blue channel here too, and headed towards that trend line, and we may just work sideways into it. We've talked about this a few times. There's a lot of ways this market could go, but we continue to find buying down here low, and we continue to find selling every time we try to rally here. So looks like we are in another sideways range at the moment. So we'll just have to see. But there's a look at the daily. Let's flip over to the intraday chart and we'll kind of go through what happened and go through the trades. Okay, here's a look at the 2000 tick chart. And as you can see, we'd rallied some off the lows yesterday, early this morning, but at that 7:30 uh, news that came out, the core CPI, this thing shot straight up and then just turned and went straight down. And you can see that. Let's actually zoom in here little bit, and you can kind of see the how this thing looks. And I mean, this was very quick and big move. So you probably, I mean, there was no chance to. There was nothing that really should take you long here. If you did get long here, you really weren't following the rules because you would expect a breakout here to possibly fail. And so you'd probably be wanting to look for a short here. And I don't see any real opportunity at a decent short yet either. There is a little double top there. That was an engulfing bar. Hopefully you didn't get caught up in that. If you did, hopefully you'd already you got your 4 ticks out of it and you had your safety stop in place on anything else so that you didn't get hammered too bad here. So the good thing about it is we did go higher first, which you're not really looking for any longs here before we turn down. So it's very doubtful you could get into the short here until we kind of settle down either. So if you profited off either move, either direction, then that's great. And if you didn't profit, hopefully your loss was not very big. But again, you shouldn't have been looking for any longs here yet. It's not the kind of place you're looking for. But the bottom just falls out of this thing. And generally, CPI doesn't really create. You might get a little bit of movement, but it's been a while since I remember seeing anything like this. Um, but it drops on down, and we're going to zoom on in here. And you can see we try to go higher once, twice. So there's a failure right there, but I wouldn't take that failure. It's not back to the EMA. But when it gives you this second entry short here and this looks like a spike, and you figure we'd probably go into a channel right there. I like that second entry short. Um, that turns out to be a really nice move. If you can catch that, maybe that's the only trade you need today. And then we just kind of work sideways back to the trend line. We do make a lower high here, but by that time there's so much support there, you just can't go short there. If you did, it would have survived, but that's not a great. You can clearly see the support across there, and you can see there's some congestion here. That's just not a good place to go short. Same thing here. you really just don't want to go short there. You do get a little breakout pullback short, but notice how it doesn't go much further, and the breakout fails. Even in a strong downtrend, the breakout fails, and next thing you know, we're kind of trending back up. And generally what will happen when you have a news item like this is before the day is over, the market, usually within a couple of hours, the market recovers all that and kind of resets and starts over. And that's what happened today. Let's back out here one more time. We've already talked about a couple of the trades, but I should have talked about this before we got into the trades. But you can see we kind of worked back, and we didn't quite completely take it all back, but we got most of it back right there. Maybe we did go higher. No, we didn't quite get it all back. We came close. But the other thing is, this is where we closed yesterday, this red line across here. And this is where we opened at 8:30, and that leaves a gap. And you would expect prices to fill that gap. And notice right here, they went to almost a perfect tick to fill in that gap, and then it looked like we were going to sell off again, and then there was just mixed trading after that. So really, we spent the morning in this sideways range after the sell-off. We had the steep sell-off, then we went sideways for most of the morning. And then most of the afternoon, all we did was just moved up and had a higher range. It's just mixed trading. And this stuff can be hard to trade because, you know, one minute you're racing up and the next minute you're falling like a rock, and then you're racing up and you're falling. It's just difficult trading unless you turn at consistent places. And that didn't really happen a lot. So really the only thing you could do was really kind of trade the reversals and the trends that were within those ranges. So now that you see that big picture and what happened there, and again, prices are going to try to fill that gap. And they're also going to try to take back the news item that was, most of this is just emotional. And then once the market kind of gains its composure again, it takes it back and resets. And we got close here, but we didn't quite. We missed by a few points getting back to scratch there where we started when the news hit. So anyway, hopefully that makes sense to you, but that's generally what will happen on a news item like that. And on these gaps, a lot of times they'll fill that gap on the same day too. So, but let's zoom back in and finish up the trades here. We had a few here early on, but notice turns out to be a spiking channel, and we're working down. And I've already talked about why you couldn't take these trades, but notice you do get a clear close outside, a move to a new low, and then we're kind of bouncing here. Notice that you do have a trend line there. If you draw it off those first two swings, and we come back and confirm it here. And so that's really a higher low on a confirmation of this trend line, but it's also like a little breakout pullback because there's a little bit of congestion there. And at this point, you're expecting prices to possibly fill the gap, possibly reset from the sell-off. So there's reasons, and this is played out. So there's reasons to consider that, hey, prices may go higher here. So I like this one just because it's a triple. Actually, I missed this green one here. Notice that you got the new low after the break, and new low, and you run up and you get a first entry and then a second entry right there at the EMA. It's a failure. So there's a trap there. It's not a super great place that you'd be looking for a trap, but it's still a trap there. And you can clearly see the new low, first entry, second entry, and it gets us back in the range, and we're pushing higher. And it turns out we're just kind of working sideways. But notice the triple test there. I would not go long one tick above this bar, but when it broke lower and turned up, when it breaks higher right here, you might consider that trade because it is a triple test. Notice the low. We test it once, we test it twice, and then we make the higher low here that confirms the trend line. So we're making higher highs and higher lows here, and you might expect a measured move, and so that puts your target. You can see that's exactly where we went before we sold off. Perfect measured move almost. So I like those two trades. There was a failure again here. I don't think I would take that. That's a really big bar, and you've already met your target. So I just think, even though it's at the trend line, 24 ticks, I mean, if you took it, I wouldn't beat you up too bad over it, but it's not the kind of reversal that I'd look to take there. And then, of course, we finally get the break. We try to go higher a few times. You don't really want to look for a short there. There is a triple test here. Maybe you take that short, right, thinking you ride it back to the midline or EMA, but we did just come off the trend line, and we've been running from the highs to the lows, so there's a chance we go higher here. Even though there's not a really good setup to go long, there's a chance you do go higher. So I'm not as crazy about going short here. If you did, again, it's another one you could argue for. There's always a chance that, you see it a little differently, or maybe it even looks slightly different on your chart. And, just because we don't see it exactly the same doesn't mean you're wrong if I didn't mark it or something. So people will send me something and say, well, you didn't even talk about this. Well, it's because I didn't see it as being worth the risk if I didn't mark it. So, if you like the risk and you're willing to take high risk, then, you might have seen it differently. But that's okay. So anyway, we drop on down here. You get a close outside new low and we bounce. Again, there's a triple test there, but this signal bar is not very good. There's a lot of stem there, and you can see we just kind of hung around. And then we finally bounced again, and it just looks congested there. I just don't see any way to enter that. And it looks like we're going to make a new high, and then we try to go higher once. We shoot down through the EMA, pull back and fail and turn down. So if it breaks lower right here, that's going to be a failed second entry long. Guaranteed this will trap some shorts. And you can see how quickly that drops, showing you that they definitely trap people. And then, of course, you come down here and you get another test of this support area here, and a really nice signal bar. But you do make a new low there, so it's a little risky. You're better off to wait on the higher low. You may not have been able to get in this trade anyway, because it shoots up, it gaps over, and just keeps going, and it doesn't really pull back again. So my guess is, unless you got real lucky, even if you tried to enter that, you probably couldn't enter it. So it runs up, and then we're just kind of chopping sideways, pulls back. And you would set your trend line there and kind of see what happens. And notice the new low, and then you get a first entry, second entry, right at the key entry point that fails. So that's a trap, and you can see how it quickly runs back up. It does have struggle to kind of go higher there, but you're long scalped out by that point. There's a higher low here, but there's too much resistance right there. If it breaks higher, it's probably going higher, but I don't think you want to risk it. What you might do is wait and see if it comes back and gives you another failure and another chance to enter it again, but it doesn't. So runs on up. Notice how we don't get back to the other side, and then you get your break. But you get a first entry and a second entry with a nice signal bar, a higher low as well, right off the EMA when you're looking for prices to attempt a new high. And it runs up pretty quickly, finds resistance there, doesn't quite make a new high. In fact, this really looks like one test. You could argue that there's a shorter term test in there, but I don't think I would trust that on a triple test when we haven't made a new high yet. And you don't get a chance to enter short here other than that, unless you took that one. And that is a second entry short too. Notice the new low, first entry, second entry. I mean, it's a nice signal bar. It's another one you could argue to be green, but I'd skip it. And of course, you do get two legs down. You get a move down, a break of the channel, new low, and then you reverse them. But again, you don't get a setup here to go long. You don't really get a reversal that sets up properly. And then you're just kind of chopping sideways here again. I don't see anything in here until maybe here when you come back and confirm that trend line. And what you could do, this is like a first, second, third entry. But it's also a little bit congested right here. So maybe you say, maybe you treat that as a failed breakout of that little congested area, and with a nice signal bar that confirms the trend line. And if you see it like that, maybe you take that one. Turns out to be a really nice trade. We run down and it just bounces. It comes right back. You get another second entry there. But again, that one's still inside this little short-term trend up. I didn't color this, but you can see that channel working up, and it closes still inside. We do get a break, and finally you tried to you get a lower high here, still right off the key entry point, and you did get what looks like a close outside. It's not super convincing, but it's probably good enough. But when it tries to go higher there and gives you this signal bar, and it does break higher first and turn down, so maybe you trade that as an engulfing bar. It's got a little bit of stem on it, so if you didn't trade it as an engulfing bar, you might skip that one. But it runs on down, and we didn't quite get there, but we come back, and then the trend line holds again. And it's kind of the same thing. You got those channel working up, you get a close outside, new high, and it turns down right there at the key entry point, even though, again, this is not a super convincing close outside, and I may have drawn it just a little bit off, and maybe it is. Maybe there, some people did see it as a close outside and some didn't. But this turns on down. Get a little short-term channel break, a couple of legs to a new low, and it bounces. Again, I don't think you want to go long. I don't see any shorts in there. Does bounce off the low. Get a first entry, second entry, fails. So if it breaks higher here, it's probably going to trap people. The key is just making sure you got room to get out before that trend line, just in case it does turn back down there. And it's still a little aggressive too, so it's not the greatest setup. But it's one you might consider. Turns out to be a really nice trade. And of course, you've got your break and you run to a new high, and it actually runs up again. You get a second entry short right there, and it's a lower high, but the signal bar is just not quite good enough. And it would have been a quick, easy trade on a breakout. But it finds support here and turns up again. Really what you have here is another little trading range. It's probably more like that right there. And so you might have gone short there. The only problem is you do have this green channel, and there's been no break of it yet. So it's a little iffy going short on a kind of an inside bar there. It does make a equal high there. So if you really wanted to take that, you could, if you saw it as a triple test. So it's another one that's a possibility. And of course we come down and it quickly bounces and we just continue higher. And again, it's hard to say if you got a convincing close outside. Again, I may have it drawn a little bit off right there. And maybe it's more like this. And then of course we get an overshoot and it leads to a break, move to a new high. And again, I just don't see a setup to go short there until here. You might look at this one as a failure. Notice you get a first entry and then you get a second entry and it doesn't go anywhere and it fails. Generally though, you would like this to be on the other side of the EMA, but this green channel is played out and you could trade this as a trend channel too, or I'm sorry, a range as well. So you're really getting a chance to short it at the highs of the range. So that's another possibility. And then we just kind of continue in this. That's too congested there. You've been bouncing at the midline. I don't think you want to risk that one. No chance to go long here. There is a little breakout pullback, but you'd want to see it test that more than one time, even though it works. And then again, you're just kind of chopping along here. There's another little channel working up here. And after the fact, I really like this one better drawing from here. I think that's really where the trend started. I think that's really what you have right there, because this looks all congested here. But it runs up, you get a close outside. It does make a new high. It makes a lower high here, not much room back to the EMA, and you see it bounces. And then we're just kind of chopping along. It's another one of those little sideways tight deals, and I just don't see anything in there. Except here, I think it was pretty obvious. We tried to go higher once, twice, and it fails. I marked this one red. Because we're probably going to go higher, but looking back at it, there is some support there when you draw that line. It makes it look a little different, and that's why I always tell people to draw these, because it does change the look of it sometimes, and it gives you a little more information. I'll leave that one red because it's pretty obvious it tries to go higher once, twice, but no doubt you got to be concerned about that support right there. I don't know if there's enough room in there or not. I don't think there is. Now you see there's only 5 ticks, and you need 6 to get out on a scalp if you enter with a, it depends on how you enter. If you entered with a limit order, maybe you got room there. Otherwise, you don't. And we continue lower here, and I just don't see any setups I like all the way down here. And you do get the break and new low, and then you're running up, and I don't see anything that would tempt me to want to go long there yet. And then you're just chopping along, and finally you get this channel, you get a break, move to a new high, and you get a second entry short with a very nice signal bar right there. So I kind of like that one. There is a lower high, but now you're too close to the EMA. It could bounce, and it runs down here and just kind of chops along before finding another channel going higher. And I don't see anything in here that tempts me. There's a higher low here, but it's right into the EMA. There's a failure here, but it doesn't set up properly, and we're just a weak chop higher, and then you're kind of running sideways again. It's really more support there than it is anything else. But I like this one because it's a triple test, and it is a second entry long, and you are looking for a retest of that high. So I like that one. We run on up to make the new high, and that does run back up to what would be, turns out to be kind of the high of the afternoon range. And this is where it really gets tricky in here. Then after that, it's just hard to know what prices are really doing. All you can do is draw these trend channels, and I see very little in here that I would be willing to take. You're working down here, you get a break. I'd wait on the second entry here. You get one, but it's a little inside bar. It's not really a very good setup. And it runs up. You get a close outside, no chance to go long, and really no setup to go short. And then you're running down. Really no chance to do either again, and it's just no direction, no rhyme or reason here. Finally, you kind of get prices working higher, and you get a failure right here, and even it's not real convincing, but you can see the new low there. It's lower than that swing, and you get a first entry, second entry, and it is right off the EMA, right off the trend line, and it does. You can see that trap takes off. Your entry would be 1 tick above the green bar because that's where it breaks higher and fails, but your safety stop has to go below this bar because it makes the swing low. That's technically the signal bar, but the failure occurred here. It's the only time you'll enter like that, but on failure. So runs up, we get a little overshoot possibly, and then it leads to a break. Move to a new high. I don't see any longs you can take here, and it doesn't set up for a short really either. So runs to that new high. You get a lower high here. Not a very good signal bar. And same thing here. There is a second entry short here, but that's your signal bar. It's too bullish. And you see what would have happened to you. It runs up one more time and then turns down. And there's a lower high here, but no setup. Just wasn't much. I mean, literally after about lunchtime, just wasn't a whole lot of direction here. Prices are just chopping around. We'd already met the measured move, filled the gap. There just wasn't any reason to think that prices may continue to go higher, and when they struggle to go higher. And so it's just a lot of mixed trading here. They try to go lower, couldn't go lower, then they go higher, can't go higher, they go lower. And we actually closed much lower in the end, and we closed outside that support area. So anyway, difficult afternoon, so not a lot of trades there. And again, there's a bunch of greens in there you could argue for, but just wait on the better trades, and there just weren't a lot of them today. I mean, there's a few here, don't get me wrong. Early on there was a few, and there were a few really good trades. If you could catch one of these early ones, maybe you didn't even need to stick it out today, and that's the key. For whatever reason, the mornings tend to be the better trading, in my opinion. That's not 100%, but most of the time, the majority of the time, your morning is easier to trade than the late afternoon. And the real thing about the morning is, if you make a mistake in here, you got all day to make it up. But if you get up here at 2 o'clock or so, 1:30, 2 o'clock, and you make a mistake, you don't have much time to make it up. You got 30 minutes to an hour, and if you don't, then you're risking adding on to a losing day. So that's the other reason I like to trade the mornings. It just seems like you have more success. It's just my experience. So anyway, I'm not going to beat around the bush. We're almost 30 minutes here. We're going on 25 plus. So I'm going to wrap it up. We'll be back again to do it tomorrow and wrap up our week. I hope you had a good trading day. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next.